Happy Friday, everyone. Welcome to another big edition of the Friday Preview. 3 weeks to go until the Choose Tap Final Series, and us here at EFL House are all over it and ready to give you your Friday footy fix in the Eastern Football League. I'm Ben Waterworth, and joining me to have a look at all things Eastern Football League and all things tomorrow is Dan Campbell, DC Sting. Good to have you back on a Friday afternoon here at EFL House. Dan?
Yeah, looking forward to going through all the big games in the Eastern Football League this weekend.
And one man who's been joining us quite regularly throughout the season on a Friday afternoon here at EFL House is Sam Gastin. Hello, Samuel.
G'day, Benny. It's great to be here on a Friday as usual, and I'm really enjoying it the season so far.
We all are. We're all enjoying it here on the Friday Preview, all things Eastern Football League. And joining us, the dulcet tones himself. Great to have Damian Watson here at EFL House. Hello, Damo.
Pleasure to be here, Benny. Good to be here, despite being under the weather with this chilly July month we're experiencing.
Very, very chilly. But never fear, Damo, because it's August. It's just turned August, and we're looking forward to having a look at all things Eastern Football League action, because tomorrow is the 3rd of August, and we're going to have a look at Division 4, all thanks to Inside Football, the must-read for the fair dinkum footy fan. Damo, let's start with you. Kilsyth taking on Park Orchards, a must-win game for Park Orchards if they want to keep their finals hopes alive.
That's right, but also Kilsyth have a very good incentive to push and maintain their spot in the top 4 in Division 4, and that's always essential in the run home. And the Cougars, as I said, looking to consolidate a position within that top 4, and they defeated Surrey Park by just 5 points last week, and really the key lies up forward, to be perfectly honest. Jay Sherlock booting 6 goals. He was effectively the difference. Jordan Chettle, of course, exerting his influence on the match last week, and they'll both be pivotal players tomorrow afternoon. But meanwhile, the Sharks, though, as you mentioned, they have to win to keep any chance of playing finals alive, and I think they'll be refreshed after the bye as well. Fraser up forward and the Fahere brothers, they'll be players to watch, but I think Kilsyth have a greater incentive and they'll prevail by 40 points. I'm not sure about you guys, though.
Oh, no, I think Kilsyth's probably the team as well. Park Orchards simply need to win, but I think Park Orchards have left their run a little bit too late, and Kilsyth probably not the same team that were a couple of earlier on in the season, Dan?
Yeah, certainly. Kilsyth have been able to string together a few good weeks of footy now, and I think the finals on the line here, I think Kilsyth will be too good tomorrow afternoon against Park Orchard.
Let's have a look at the next game, Sam Gastin. Nunawading hosting South Belgrave at the beautiful Coonung Reserve, not too far from your beautiful, humble abode. The last time these two teams met, Nunawading really took it up to South Belgrave.
Yeah, spot on. There is a bit of interesting history between these two teams. Last time, obviously, South Belgrave have been so good all year, and when they came up against Nunawading earlier on in the year, Nunna were really struggling. So to push them there was a very good effort, and I think they might give them another crack again. I mean, South Belgrave 13-0. It wouldn't be the worst thing in the world if they did have a loss sort of going into the finals. Obviously, they wouldn't be thinking that in the club, but if they lost, sort of just reassess again and then have another final charge in what's going to be a massive final series. So, Nunawading, they obviously lost last weekend in a very close match to Forest Hill, but they're travelling along nicely, winning 3 games in a row before that, and I think they're probably a much better side at the moment than their record and ladder position suggests.
Yep. I think so as well. South Belgrave, obviously undefeated throughout the season. Who's a believer in the loss that you need to have, though? Because I'm a big believer in it. I think South Belgrave just going about their business very nicely, trying to almost replicate what the Basin did last year, Dan.
Yeah, I was just about to say the loss you need to have is one of your prior convictions, Ben Waterworth. Yes. But take your pick up forward for South Belgrave. Lee Odermatt and the like are doing it very nicely down there, and I don't think Nunawading will get close tomorrow afternoon.
Well, let's have a look at the next game in Division 4. It's Surrey Park taking on Canterbury, and this time last year, Dan Campbell, DC Sting, we were all thinking that Surrey Park might be able to get their first victory around round 18 last year. Everyone thought Surrey Park might be able to get that victory over Canterbury. Canterbury won, but gosh, a lot's changed in 12 months.
Well, we got a clairvoyant on the huddle last year, I remember, who predicted that Surrey Park would win a game in 2012, so they've debunked the clairvoyant theory there. But Surrey Park has not won a game since it defeated Forest Hill in June, and Canterbury hasn't won a game all season. Look, Conker's been in great form this year. Kicked 5 last week in a losing side, and the big ruckman, Nick Soda's been doing it very nicely. Jeffries, the captain, continues to shine in the best, and it's very hard not to back Surrey against a winless opponent.
Yeah, very hard not to back Canterbury. Oh, very hard to back Canterbury, I should say, at the moment. Not a lot going right for the Cobras, and you would think the Panthers should be too strong out there at Surrey Park Reserve. The Eastern Lions hosting Forest Hill across the road here from EFL House tomorrow afternoon, Damian Watson. The Lions, look, they're just starting to show a little bit of improvement over the past couple of weeks, but Forest Hill just have so much to play for and can't afford to drop this game.
Well, that's right. right, Ben. The Zebras are really striving to maintain their position in the top 5 for a finals berth, and they'll have a lot at stake. They pipped Nunawading at the post by 2 points last week, which was really crucial in the context of their season. And I think the difference was merely clinching Cotter, who converted 6 goals. He was easily the best on ground. Meanwhile, Eastern Lions, I know they've shown improvement, as you mentioned, Benny, but they were comprehensively defeated to the tune of 63 points, admittedly by a strong side in South Belgrade. Peter Giannopoulos, I think, was the shining light for the Eastern Lions side with 5 goals. But I think Forest Hill will be too strong, and they'll probably prevail by about 6 goals.
They've got too much to play for Forest Hill. I know you saw, a couple of weeks ago, Dan, you saw them up against Surrey Park, and the Panthers got the win on that occasion. But they've got some good structure in that side, and certainly can compete with those big boys in Division 4.
Yeah, certainly. And with Coldstream with a very tough game this week against Sylvan, I think it is. Forest Hill, too much to play for, and they've really got to cash in on this opportunity to consolidate their spot in the top 5, because as Peter Baird has said previously, Forest Hill have had the tag of best of the rest.
They certainly have. You mentioned that Coldstream Sylvan game, and it's a big game, Sam Gastin, and I hope you've got a very, very warm and woolly jacket ready to take up to Coldstream Reserve, because on Sunday, this is a standalone Sunday game, the Cougars go up against Sylvan. In round 1, these two teams clashed on a Sunday. Sylvan comprehensively beat the Cougars on that occasion. Can Coldstream turn it around?
Well, they've got the home ground advantage in this one, which will give them a little bit of a incentive, I guess, to take the win there. They really need to scalp Coldstream. They've look, not only to make the finals, but if they are going to play a part in the final series, they need to win the game against one of those higher-ranked teams and really take a little bit of confidence into the finals. And that's where their loss last week to Ferntree Gully was 53 points, was pretty disappointing. So they need to bounce back. But as I mentioned, the home ground advantage, they've won 4 of their 6 at home this year. So that's going to be, it's going to be a massive day on the Sunday. Obviously, there'll be plenty down there. So it's a win that they need to have. I don't think they will. I think Sylvan results would show that they'll be too strong, but I think it'll be a ripper clash down there.
It will be a ripper clash, 2 local rivals, and they certainly know how to play the cold very, very well. Damo, I know you've had a little bit of a look at Sylvan throughout the year. Paddy Rattray booting 11 goals last week. Chris Goodlett with 5. They just seem to be firing on all cylinders up forward at the moment.
They certainly are in form, but I think this is a very difficult match to pick. You mentioned that this is arguably the match of the round in Division 4, and also with the standalone Sunday game, I think the occasion may get to the players. It'll be difficult to pick.
Will be interesting. We'll have our EFL TV cameras up there to capture all of the happenings up there at Coldstream Reserve. Take your woolies, no doubt about that one. You're listening to the Friday preview, all thanks to Inside Football, the must-read for the fair dinkum footy fan. Pick up a copy at your local newsagents, or you can download on your iPhones or iPads. Dan Campbell, DC Sting, let's have a look at Division 3. And as we have a look at the Division 3 ladder, we'll concentrate towards the middle part of the Division 3 ladder, because it's Templestowe up against the Glen Waverley Hawks. Templestowe have won their past 2 games in a row, and they're starting to recapture a little bit of that form they showed at the start of the season, but it's just all too late now.
Yeah, well, it's been 2 very hard-fought wins in a row for Templestowe. Last week, of course, Warrandyte by a point, and the week before against Heathmont in very trying conditions. Look, grass was fantastic last week for Templestowe. Yes, the pig. Yes. Pigs love the mud, as Peter Baird says. He kicked 7 or 8 last week, and he's up against his old side this weekend, so up against old friends, of course. And Lukey Scanlon last week kicked 4 goals for the Hawks, so he's really embraced that Division 3 game this year, and Riddle had another fantastic game. Ladder positions of these sides are very different, but Saturday looks like it might be a very dry day. Glen Waverley Hawks got a lot of firepower up forward. Gray, Carnelli and Dewar. Should be interesting against the likes of Aaron Chambers down back for Templestowe. I'm going to tip the upset here. I'm going for the Glen Waverley Hawks. Oh,
interesting, Samuel. You saw Glen Waverley a couple of weeks ago, and they're able to get the chocolates over Whitehorse. They can show some pretty good form when they're on song, but they have to be on song.
Yeah, they do. And Lukey Scanlon, as DC mentioned, is an interesting one. When I saw him, they sort of played him out of the square a little bit there, and he's only a small man, but they obviously, first year at the club, but they obviously do rate him pretty highly. So I think they're definitely a chance in this one too.
Mitcham take on Churnside Park Damian Watson. In the next game we're going to have a look at, the MCG of the Eastern Football League has been a pretty happy hunting ground for the Tigers this year, but they now have slipped to 4th on the ladder, so they'll be looking for a bit of a percentage booster here.
Well, that's right, and that's not the only thing at stake this weekend as well. Mitcham are fighting effectively for top spot because it's a really tight logjam up the top of the Division 3 table. It's going to be very difficult to differentiate between any of those those sides come the end of the year. As Ray Bear mentioned on the huddle back on Wednesday night, it's just about who brings their A game in the climactic stages of the season. Look, Mitcham, they defeated Heathmont by 42 points last week, so they'll carry a lot of form into this game. And look, Steve Pym, I know he hasn't been in form of late. He had a very good first half of the season, but he's that zeitgeist up forward. He really embodies the Mitcham Footy Club as that target. And Braden Cross, I think he'll be a player to watch tomorrow. Meanwhile, the Panthers, they lost to Doncaster by 42 points, which really took the wind out of their sails. Although Scott Hamill really was serviceable with 5 goals. He was their best player. And they're that side. They're not a bottom team, as was suggested earlier in the season, but I don't think they're good enough to challenge Mitcham, and I think the Tigers could win pretty convincingly.
It's going to be a good contest and a good opportunity for Chirnside Park to test themselves against one of the best in Division 3, but the Tigers, you would think, should be too strong with too much to play for. Wanturna South up against Heathmont tomorrow afternoon. Samuel Gastin. Wanturna South, very disappointing against Baronia last weekend, and they'll be looking to bounce back against Heathmont. You mentioned that Coldstream needed a scalp. Well, Heathmont need a scalp because they still haven't been able to get a victory over a team above them on the Division 3 ladder.
Yeah, you're spot on. There's plenty on the line for, I guess, probably both sides this weekend. Wanturna South, you said they needed to bounce back, but that was something they sort of failed to do last week against Baronia after they did defeat Mitcham pretty convincingly 2 weeks before that. So I think inaccuracy cost them on the weekend. They kicked something like 5-13, which is obviously going to be very disappointing on any day. But they do need a win in this one, as both sides do, I guess. But that logjam on top of Division 3 there it's a really interesting one because 2 of those sides, Baronia, Mitcham, Doncaster and Wanturna South, they're going to have to play each other in the first week of finals. So it's going to be really interesting. And to get that first spot would be what Wanturna South is after here. It'll give them a massive advantage.
You'd think they'd be favourites sitting in this game, and they should be too strong. But I think Heathmont's, even though they haven't been able to get a victory over a team above them on the ladder, we have to pay credit to Heathmont this year because a lot of people thought that they would struggle to stay up in Division 3 this season, but they've been able to get 8 wins for the season, 8 and 7 they currently sit. They're only 1 game behind, still a fair bit of percentage. But Dan, you must be really impressed with what the Jets have been able to accomplish.
As we've seen on the EFL website, they're amongst the poll of which team surprised you the most this year, and they would have surprised a lot of people this year. There's a player in there, his name's Kevin Clark. He's an absolutely fantastic and an under player. I'm not sure Heathmont will have enough to match it with Wanturna South. There's a saying that you can't keep a good man down. I don't think you can keep a good group of men down either, with Wanturna South going about it very nicely at the moment. Interesting to note, though, last week, Wanturna South forwards, who usually fire, and of course, as a party, the new recruit, was kept very, very quiet last week, so expect them to come out firing, all guns blazing this week.
Yeah, Wanturna South, the best attacking team in Division 3. Certainly know how to put the points on the board, but Baronia know how to stop them. And speaking of Baronia, DC, let's go back to you because it's Ringwood hosting Baronia, and the Hawks are the talk of the town in Division 3 at the moment. They've shot up to the top of the Division 3 ladder. They are the best defensive team in the competition, and they've got the best percentage in Division 3 at the moment.
Not only the talk of the town at the moment, Ben, but they're the hottest ticket in town at the moment, the Baronia Hawks. They announced themselves again last week, defeating Wanturna South, of course, by 41 points. So they're right up there in premiership contention. Bolton and Bazinskis had great games again, and the coach Mark Hardy kicked 2 majors, which was positive. But I'm not sure the wide spaces of Jubilee Park will bother Baronia too much, given their ground's quite massive as well. But Ringwood must be wary of the Hawks' defence. Burmeister, Farmer, Hill last week all kicked bags, and the Hawks were able to restrict Wanturna's better goal kickers last week. But I can't see Ringwood getting too close to this one. I think the Hawks have to win.
The Hawks have to win. So do Ringwood, though. They're only 1 game outside that top 5 at the moment, Damo. And we've talked a lot about probably the disappointment of Ringwood this season, but they've just started to come good. They've probably left it a tad too late, though.
Well, you would have thought so, but they have been in form of late against all expectations, Betty. You would expect Baronia with their form to win tomorrow afternoon, but this could be a danger game. You never know.
I think it's a danger game. I think that's the best way to sum it up, Damo. Let's head back to you, and it's a danger game, I think, for Doncaster tomorrow because they come up against the Basin. The Basin currently sit in 5th spot on the ladder. They're a game and a fair bit of percentage above Ringwood and Heathmont. This is certainly a bit of a danger game for Doncaster. They can't afford to take the big bears lightly.
Well, that's right. And this is actually an enticing game in my book. I mean, the Basin are a very physical side, and I reckon they could challenge Doncaster this weekend. Look, they defeated Chirnside Park, the ladder that is Doncaster, by 42 points last week, and Chris Anarkis hasn't he been in great form? 5 goals.
Love him.
obviously last Saturday, and I think he'll be crucial this weekend. The Basin, on the other hand, though, they're aiming to maintain their chance of a finals berth in that fragile 5th position in Division 2. The Bears defeated the Whitehorse Pioneers, obviously a lowly side, by 41 points. Andy Coltrera, of course, with 5 majors last week. He's going to be a vital player tomorrow afternoon. Luke Watson as well. I think it could be a low-scoring game, but I think Doncaster can get the chocolates by 2 goals.
Interesting you say a low-scoring game. Two of the better attacking teams, I think, going around in Division 3, but Doncaster certainly do. Both teams used to playing on small grounds as well, so interesting to see how that one plays out. Now, Samuel, we move on to Whitehorse against Warrandyte. This is massive. Peter Baird and I were talking during the week. This is arguably the biggest game in Division 3 this year. Basically, the loser of Whitehorse and Warrandyte almost says hello to Division 4 in 2014. Both teams will be desperate.
Yeah, they certainly will be. It's a massive game. It's almost a grand final for these two sides because there's no doubt about it, and neither of them would want to go down to Division 4 next year. The reason behind that is Whitehorse have a better percentage than Warrandyte. They are a game clear, Warrandyte, that is, but Whitehorse 69% to Warrandyte's 56%. So if they do get the win on the weekend, they'll jump off the bottom of the ladder there and hopefully stay in Division 3 for a year longer. So it's going to be a very interesting clash. Normally, before last week, I would have said Whitehorse would be definite favourites for this one. But Warrandyte were actually pretty good. They played Templestowe. They lost by 1 point and were probably pretty unlucky there after leading all day. But they now go out to Springfield Park, which Whitehorse do. They take a very favourable home ground advantage there because it is an interesting sort of ground. It's quite small
the soccer field of the EFL.
Yeah, spot on. I've heard you say Tony Vitaka rates him a 5-goal better side.
He does.
At Springfield Park. So that's a massive factor. Another one is Eddie Sim, who's really reached good form again. He's struggled this year a little bit with injuries and the like. I saw him play and he was sort of hobbling around on one leg a couple of weeks ago. So to have him back in the best last week is really handy, and it's another factor that I think hopefully we'll get Whitehorse over the line.
Hopefully. Slight heart towards the Whitehorse.
I'm not even going to try and put away my bias. I'm going for the Pioneers in this one.
Whoever loses this week, almost certain for relegation, as we've mentioned, but whoever wins and loses is a bit irrelevant to the question I'm about to ask. Who do you think would be better suited for relegation next season?
It's an interesting question because when you start to look at that kind of thing, you look at the depth of the football club, because you look at East Burwood in Division 1 at the moment and their reserves and their 19s are struggling, so probably they're the logical side to go down. You have a look at the ladder and both teams are probably towards the bottom across all 3 competitions. Of course, the Pioneers don't even have a 19 side at the moment, so it's hard to split. I don't think any of them would rather go down, Sam.
No, I don't think so. The Warrandyte's losses this year have been big losses.
They have.
Maybe Whitehorse, they've been competitive, but like you said, their junior club obviously plays in the YJFL, and then they've dropped out of the 19s. So I don't, like you said, I don't think both of them would want to be down there, but it's not the worst scenario for one of those two sides, I don't think.
No, Division 4, probably one of the hardest divisions to get out of. Coldstream all know about that, trying to get back up into Division 3 after going down last year. So we'll watch this space with plenty of interest, and we'll hear from you right throughout EFL Game Day on 98.1 FM tomorrow. Samuel, you're listening to the Friday preview, all thanks to Inside Football, the must-read for the fair income footy fan. Make sure you pick up a great copy of that magazine from your local Woolworths, your news agents, or you can go all high-tech Dan Campbell style and get it on your iPhones or iPads. Let's have a look at Division 2. Let's have a look at the Division 2 ladder. Some fascinating results last weekend, gentlemen, and none more fascinating than Bayswater knocking off Croydon, Dan Campbell. And tomorrow, Bayswater, with that momentum in mind, come up against the might of Montrose, who just seem to not put a foot wrong at the moment.
Yeah, well, we saw Bayswater last week, and it was a very gutsy win on their part. But ladder leaders Montrose, I mentioned Baronia are the hottest ticket in town at the moment. Well, Montrose must be the second hottest ticket in town at the moment. They had a 40-point win over Donvale last week, undefeated run at 14. Mark Watson's kicked 27 goals from 15 games. Another good game last week with 3 goals. Bayswater, as we mentioned, tough win against Croydon. McInerney, the star, with 6 last week. I don't think anybody could have stopped him, to be honest, last week. But Montrose have proven all year they're a class above, and they should get the points here.
Montrose, will they lose a game for the rest of the season? Damo or Sam, I don't know how you guys feel about it, but obviously the loss they need to have is obviously a big talking point at this time of the year. But Montrose will be pretty satisfied to go in with just 1 loss, I think, going into the Tuesday final series.
Yeah, I think they will, and I'm not sure if they will lose for the rest of the year, maybe all the way through to the grand final, because they've shown this year that they, like Dan said, they really are a class above everyone else, I think.
Well, one team that's certainly going the opposite way of Montrose at the moment is the Donvale Football Club, Damian Watson, and they travel out to Heights Reserve tomorrow to take on an informed Mooroolbark. The Mustangs have moved to second on the ladder after a great win over the Waverley Blues last weekend. This is a big game for Donvale.
It certainly is, and it's been a dramatic fall from grace, hasn't it, in recent weeks for the Dobvale Footy Club. Look, unfortunately, I have to say it shapes as a one-sided encounter with a stark contrast in form between these two sides. Look, the Mustangs defeated the Waverley Blues by 37 points last week. They were in top form. Alex Wadsworth, with 4 goals, and Cam Libford in great form. They just look untouchable almost. Meanwhile, Dobvale, look, they were gallant against Montrose last week, a 40-point loss. Mitch Dawson and Max Otten could figure prominently for the Vales tomorrow, but I think Mooroolbark can do this quite comprehensively.
What do you think about Donvale, Sam? With Upper Ferntree Gully really coming to the party over the past couple of weeks, Donvale, that team, shot into favouritism to probably go down to Division 3 next year?
Yeah, I think so. I think if you look at the sides around them, on the bottom of the ladder there, you've got, as you said, Upper Ferntree Gully improving, and 2 others.
Donny East and the Waverley Blues.
Donny East and the Waverley Blues as well, who aren't playing the worst footy. So I think Donvale are the ones that probably are on the way down. They've lost something like 8 in a row now, so it's disappointing for them after such a promising start to the season. But it's the way it goes, I guess.
And Mooroolbark getting better at the right time of the year. They're a big-bodied side, Mooroolbark, which I think will suit the finals atmosphere. So we'll wait and see how the Mustangs go in the Choose Tap Finals series. Let's have a look at the next game in Division 3, Sam. It's back on you, and it's arguably the biggest game in Division 2 this round. It's North Ringwood up against Croydon, 3rd versus 4th. After last weekend's results, both teams having surprise upset losses last weekend. This game shapes up as a big one because the loser can almost kiss their double chance hopes goodbye.
Yeah, definitely. Well, the top 4 in Division 2 is probably set, so this one's really probably a bit of a finals preview. I'm sure we'll see these two sides go at it at some stage in the finals, but as you said, both sides will be very disappointed with their losses last week, and they're both going to come out firing because a win against one another would really give a bit of confidence going into the finals. I saw this game earlier on in the year, and it was a really close clash. Obviously, Croydon got the win at home, but I think North Ringwood at Quamby are a very tough side to beat. Their loss last week was their second loss at home since 2010. When you go out to Quamby, you expect them to play some good footy, and I think we'll see that again on the weekend.
How do you guys see this one going down? Of course, you were at last week, Croydon. You were out there, Dan, watching the Blues go about their business, and they were probably a little bit underwhelming, to say the least.
Well, they had plenty of the footy, no doubt about it. They dominated the inside 50s, the free kick counts. They were up there with the hit-outs. So it's just a matter of using the footy to best advantage, which they clearly didn't do last week. So it'll be interesting to see if they do that this week.
North Ringwood up against Croydon, and we'll watch that game with plenty of interest. Let's have a look at Doncaster East and the Waverley Blues DC. We've talked about Donvale's fall from grace, but Doncaster East and the Blues have had a mini fall from grace themselves. If you have a look at the Division 2 ladder at the moment, they currently sit 7th and 8th respectively, 5 wins and 10 losses. And from a percentage perspective, they're not quite out of the relegation zone yet, so it must win game from both sides.
Nobody is safe in the Eastern Football League, Ben, but look, both suffered defeats last week, as you mentioned. Doncaster East are Upper Ferntree Gully, who do not want to go down next season, and Waverley Blues to Mooroolbark. 4 losses in the row for the Waverley Blues and 5 to Doncaster East. Last win coming in round 10. Lee Murphy this season, he missed 3 games at the start of the season, I think it was, but it's been a really quality performer since, and Carl Peterson's been a revelation. 30 goals this year, so very consistent performer. And it's as even a game as you can get, but I just get the feeling that Doncaster East have had more consistent performers this season and just a touch more class, and they might get the job done.
I think they've got the X factor, Doncaster East. I think that's something that the Waverley Blues probably don't have. So if their stars come out and fire, I'd definitely back them in this one.
I noticed Ray on Wednesday night was very fired up about the Doncaster boys, so maybe that will spur them on to get them over the line this week.
Played in the program, the rant, you reckon?
Possibly. Might have that on playback. They might play the Huddle podcasts throughout the club rooms in the pre-game at Zerby's Reserve. Let's have a look at the next game, the final game in Division 2, Damian Watson, and it is 98.1 FM's EFL Game Day. Mulgrave up against Upper Ferntree Gully. And Mulgrave, well, you have a look at the ladder positions, and Mulgrave are currently sitting 5th and Upper Ferntree Gully on the bottom of the ladder, but there's not too much separating these two teams. Statistically, only 2 games. A big day for Upper Ferntree Gully, who've hit some form.
Oh, it certainly is. And look, this is a difficult and intriguing game to select. Upper Gully, as you mentioned, striving to avoid relegation, and they're a big chance if they prevail tomorrow afternoon. And they also defeated Mulgrave, a reminder, by a slender margin last time these two sides met, so they'll carry some confidence out of that previous result. Upper Gully, they defeated Doncaster East as well by 16 points in an upset last week. Tim Risley and Jared Dirksen, they'll be imperative in Upper Gully's efforts tomorrow afternoon. And as I mentioned, they'll instill some confidence within the side. Mulgrave, they defeated North Ringwood also in an upset by 8 points. Ben Gelling was really the star, though, up forward with 6 majors. Look, I have to pick Mulgrave by 3 goals purely on form, but don't discount Upper Gully because they have a lot of incentive to avoid that dreaded last spot.
Everyone was, Sam, a couple of weeks ago, was talking about Upper Ferntree Gully being the definite team to go down. And yes, Don Vale's losing has certainly helped their case, but they just seem to play with a little bit more confidence, really playing, I think, for the coach at the moment, Andy Heyman, who we all know won't be coaching the side at the moment. So the Kings are heading in the right direction.
Yeah, they are. I think the thing that puts us off about Upper Ferntree Gully is the sort of distance between their good wins and their bad losses is massive. We've seen them a couple of times this year come out and only kick a couple of goals in a game. But when they're firing, they definitely can do some good things. And it'll be an interesting clash, this one. I'm tipping Mulgrave as well, but don't write off Upper Ferntree Gully.
I'm going to go for Upper Ferntree Gully here, boys. We spoke to Andy Heyman on EFL Sunday last week, and he talked about how youthful and exciting the side is. I think the youngest... the oldest player last week in the side was 24 or 25. Don't take me on this, but I think 24 or 25. So they've got a lot of youth playing in there, under 19s included. They're a very youthful and exciting team at the moment, and they'll have a crack.
Their under-19s are on the brink of finals, and so are their reserves at the moment. The reserves probably a few too many games behind, but the 19s are certainly in with a chance. So they've certainly got the development phase in the club nicely sorted out. You're listening to the Friday preview, all thanks to Inside Football, the must-read for the fair income footy fan. And all Division 1 clubs always read Inside Football because they always get their footy fix. And let's have a look at Division 1 and get our EFL Division 1 footy fix. And Sam Gastin, as we have a look at the Division 1 ladder, we'll focus towards the bottom of Division 1. It's Blackburn hosting Roval. We chatted to Alex Frawley during the week, and he just said that everything's ticking along nicely for the Hawks at the moment. They just simply can't afford to drop this game.
No, well, everything's ticking along nicely, but they've still got plenty to do if they are going to play a part in finals footy. I think they will win this one just because they've got more on the line in this one than Blackburn. Blackburn are 4-10. Blackburn obviously coming off the bye last week, and the week before that they did pretty well against Baldwin in the game there, lost by 15 points. And I mean, it's probably respectable rather than good, but it is encouraging signs to them. They'll be playing towards next year more than this week, I think. Roval have got more on the line. And they are one game behind South Croydon in the race for that 5th spot, but interesting to note that they don't play a team above them for the rest of the year. So if they can get a win here, they're looking very good to play a bit of finals footy.
And with South Croydon, obviously, with a tough game against Bourne, which we'll talk about with Damo a little bit later on. But Roval probably in the box seat now, Damo. I don't know how you'd see it. Probably in the box seat to take that 5th spot. And that would be a remarkable achievement for a team that's come up from Division 2 only last year.
It certainly is, because there's a huge gulf between the standard of football in Division 1 and 2 respectively. And I just think Roval have a greater incentive. And Blackburn, for me, have been really disappointing this year. They set out to improve on last year's result. Obviously a young and inexperienced side, but they've remained in second last position.
Let's have a look at East Burwood taking on Norwood. The Battle of the Woods here, DC Sting out there at East Burwood Reserve. The last time these two teams met, East Burwood very nearly knocked off Norwood, and Norwood have been known to drop a couple of these close games. They almost got beaten by Knox a couple of weeks ago, but surely Norwood win this.
A lot of water's gone under the bridge since then. Is this Wood off 2 this year?
Yes,
Ben?
Wood off 2, that's right,
Wood
TC.
off 2. East Burwood are very disappointing against Roval last week, and Norwood survived a scare from Knox. They got very close knocks to Norwood last week. Two very different seasons here. Norwood are primed for the finals in a few weeks, and East Burwood for possible relegation. That might prove as an incentive for East Burwood this Saturday to come out and play their best footy. But look, in terms of Norwood quality, Rhett Jordan's been consistently good this season. 27 goals, though no big bags. And Brett English, McCormack, Callagher, too much firepower for Norwood, and they should get the job done pretty comfortably.
Yeah, you'd think Norwood should be too strong, and with still a chance at getting a double chance. They are 30% behind Noble Park, but if Noble Park do drop one, Norwood are every chance to slot in there to that 3rd spot. Speaking of Noble Park, Damian Watson, let's have a look at their game. They take on East Ringwood, and of course the Roos will be full of confidence after last weekend, but they run into a pretty big Bulls juggernaut.
Well, that's correct, Benny. This should be a routine result, you would think, particularly at home for the Bulls at Pat Wright Senior Oval, or the Bull Ring as it's affectionately known. Look, Noble Park, they annihilated Scoresby by 106 points last week, also with a bevy of goal kickers and efficient players at their disposal. Tim Harper and Shane Allen, the pick of them last week. But as you mentioned, the Roos, they did reverse their lacklustre form after defeating South Croydon for the second time this season, on this occasion by 48 points. I think it was a greater margin last time. Cam Purdy up forward and Andrew McGuinness, they'll be players to look for tomorrow afternoon, but I think Noble Park will be too strong.
Yeah, I think Noble Park would be too strong as well. The thing that's really impressed me about Noble Park this year is that they haven't really relied on some of their big stars. Craig Anderson probably hasn't had the obviously nothing like his 2011 year when he won the Chandler medal. Stewie Kempman probably hasn't been that influential. They've missed their number one ruckman in Glenn Manson, but guys like Sam Monahan's really stood up. Tim Harper, you mentioned him before, having an outstanding year. So they've just been able to spread the load, Damo.
Yeah, that's right. And those second-tier players, as you mentioned, have lifted. And the key to a great side is having a lot of variety and depth. And that's what Noble Park seem to have.
They certainly do. And one team that has plenty of depth is the Vermont Football Club. And Vermont travel out to Scoresby Recreation Reserve tomorrow. Vermont sits second in the seniors. They sit second on the reserves. And they sit first in the 19s. Hence the great depth. And they should be too strong, you would think, tomorrow, Samuel, for Scoresby.
Yeah, I think so. They're a class act, the Vermont Footy Club. And it probably won't be a game that will draw much interest outside these two clubs because Vermont will probably get the job done quite easily, you'd expect. Scoresby, very disappointing last week and a pretty disappointing year all round. They lost by 94 points to Noble Park. One sort of shining light for them is David Del Papa, who's got a nice name. He's a nice player as well.
Just rolls the tongue nicely, doesn't it?
It's beautiful to say, yeah. Might say it a couple of times before the year is done. But first year of senior footy, he's come in and really slotted well into the side. He was named as their best on the weekend, so it's great to have a shining light there amongst all the disappointment. But you look at Vermont and, I mean, you can't really pick out any players because they've got them just all over the field. Tom Snyder was the one that has come in this year and been very impressive and kicked 3 goals as well against Lilydale last week. So while he dominates, you don't often notice him. He's always under the packs there and does plenty of good things.
He does, and a man who does plenty of great things. Ryan Mullett always does plenty of great things. Justin Van Unis coming to the side and kicking plenty of goals, DC.
Yeah, Sam, you mentioned that Scoresby have been disappointing this year. That's correct on ladder position, of course, but you just got to look at the quality they lost over the off-season to know that this year was always going to be a transition year for them. And I think if you look at the way the club's heading down the youth path, of course, I think you can have a lot of confidence in Scoresby going forward.
Most definitely, DC. Scoresby will be right. And they'll be in Division 1 next year, and we're looking forward to seeing how they go. Let's have a look at the next game in Division 1 DC, and this one is probably the game of the round. Lilydale taking on Knox. Lilydale sit in 7th. Knox sit in 8th. Only one game separating the two sides, but we seem to have drawn a line under Lilydale. If Knox probably can't make the finals, but they might be able to just cause a bit of an upset here, and Lilydale might make it hard for them to make the finals.
Yeah, well, South Croydon certainly threw a spanner in the works last week as East Ringwood knocked them off, of course. And as you mentioned, one of the matches of the round, Knox Falcons gave a brave fight last week against a really good side in Norwood, an encouraging sign heading into this week. And Waitman's last month for Lilydale has been sensational.
He's had a good year, full stop.
Season, in fact, 35 goals for the season, but I'm not sure Knox's last month, results-wise, does it justice. They're 1 win from 4, but they could easily have been 2 wins from 4. Of course, that game against South Croydon probably 4 weeks ago now really could have gone either way. 2-point loss. It's a real 50-50 game, this. I'm going to toss the coin. I'm going to go for Knox.
I'm going to go for Lilydale. I just think they have too much to play, Damo. I don't know how you see it, but Lilydale, I think, for mine.
Yeah, and the Falcon Fiesta, so appropriately term it every time these two sides play. We love it too. Lilydale, as you mentioned, greater incentive there. I don't think Knox can make it. They're too far back, 2 games behind South Croydon, who lie in 5th spot, but I think Lilydale will be too strong.
South Croydon, you mentioned them just then, Damo, and they take on Balwyn. It's the biggest challenge in the Eastern Football League, taking on the mighty Tigers, and South Croydon face that tomorrow in the final game of Division 1.
Well, it could be an intriguing clash. We all know Balwyn seem to be the invincible side in Division 1 at the moment, but South Croydon, when they're on their game, they play an exciting brand of footy, although that certainly wasn't the case last week when they lost to East Ringwood quite comprehensively in the end. They must have trouble against that particular side because they lost to them on 2 occasions this season. That could be an aberration, but Balwyn, they just look too good. It's difficult. You mentioned that sides need to have a particular loss when they're under undefeated before the finals come around.
Yep.
It could happen to Baldwin tomorrow afternoon, but it's just hard to see them lose a game at this point.
I'm not tipping against Baldwin for the rest of the year because obviously everyone knows what happened last time, but the Tigers is going from strength to strength. Just on South Croydon, they're probably now out of favour. With that loss, they went down to East Ringwood last weekend. They're probably now out of favour to make that 5th spot. Of course, with Roval having an easier draw and an 18% better they currently sit at the moment. So it'd be a great story if South Croydon will be able to get into the final series this year, into the Choose Tap final series. But Roval probably seems the likely side. Are we all on a par there?
Yeah, I think South Croydon can take a bit of confidence, though, because considering the way they started the season, they really have performed well in the back end. So if they finish maybe a couple of... Well, obviously, they'd love to make the finals, but if they do finish a little bit lower than that, I think they can still be pretty encouraged by that.
They've been the most surprising team in Division 1 this year. They've had a great year. If they make the finals or not, well done to Damian, Franken and the team. Gentlemen, that's been the Inside Football Friday preview for week 16 in the Eastern Football League. Looking forward to heading out to lots of games tomorrow and checking out all those big results. This has been the Friday preview, all thanks to Inside Football, the must-read for the fair income footy fan. Pick up a copy from your local news agents or download on your iPhone or iPad. Great to have you back here on EFL House today, DC Sting, to have a look at all things Eastern Footy League action, and we look forward to hearing you on EFL Sunday.
Yeah, certainly. It's always a pleasure, especially doing the Friday preview for Inside Football, the magazine the players read.
Yes.
But very much looking forward to all the action this weekend.
And great to have Sam Gastin in amongst us once again on a Friday afternoon here at EFL House. Big game, Whitehorse Warrandyte tomorrow.
Huge game. I can't wait. It's going to be a ripper.
And looking forward to hearing the dulcet tones of Damian Watson, as always, on a Saturday afternoon in the Radio Eastern studios. Damo, thanks for coming in on a Friday afternoon.
Oh, it was a pleasure to be here, Ben. Looking forward to tomorrow.
That's been the Inside Football Friday preview. I've been Ben Waterworth, and as a wise man once said, stick a fork in us, we're done.